Good evening, Rhino community.
Hello there.
How is everybody? I hope you're all very well. Welcome to our fourth session. We've been spending the evening playing music, and we're going to tell you what we've been playing. We're not going to do a lot of it. We're going to do some kind of name checks in the second half of the session. We're going to do this in two halves. It should be about 15 minutes long, maximum each. So I hope you enjoy. Well, tonight I kicked off with the Ohio Players with one of their usual tasteful covers. This is from Pain plus Pleasure equals Ecstasy. This is some early Ohio Players before they moved over to Mercury, and this is on the Westbound label, and played a track called Ecstasy, which is kind of 3 minutes of pretty much hardcore compacted funk.
Well, my first tune of the night is a bit of a Grail album for me, which I just got today, actually from Dusty Groove in the States, and it is Eddie Hendrix. The album's called People Hold On. It's a Motown album from 1972. Basically no bad tracks on this. The beautiful falsetto voice of Eddie Hendrix, obviously, who used to sing with the Temptations. Probably the funkiest Motown album I've come across, and obviously has the amazing legendary track Girl You Need a Change of Mind, but we actually listened to a track called If You Let Me. Highly recommended album.
Actually, all of Eddie Hendrix's album on Motown are good. Actually.
Yeah.
They're excellent, actually. Then we moved into, still got the price sticker on it from when I bought it about 15 years ago. Then we moved into Quincy Jones, and this is from the album Mellow Madness. And Is It Love That We're Missing track. This is kind of a little bit overlooked, I think, in Quincy's kind of canon of albums. It's a very nice album. Features the Brothers Johnson very heavily on here as well. Good stuff.
Okay, staying with the kind of funky soul feel, we had a track written by Eugene McDaniels, Compared to What, on the Les McCann and Eddie Harris Swiss Movement album. So this is a live album, I think recorded in Montreux, and basically Eddie Harris and Les McCann had pretty much they'd certainly never performed together. I don't think they'd ever spent a lot of time together, and there's just a fantastic spirit and great playing on this track, great energy, great album.
Good stuff. Keeping with the Eddie Harris connection, then moved into an album by Melvin Jackson called Funky Skull, and played the track called Funky Skull. This was kind of, Melvin was kind of one of Eddie Harris's main kind of musicians through this kind of period. It's an interesting album, this, because it's got lots and lots of the kind of Art Ensemble Chicago kind of AACM people on here as well. This is Melvin playing his double bass with his effects. On the back cover you can see him getting into it. Actually, double bass through a wah-wah pedal sounds like a duck. Actually, and in fact there's a track called Cold Duck Time on here as well.
There is. Which actually there's a track called Cold Duck Time on the Les McCann and Eddie Harris album.
Yeah.
And it's the envelope filter for those people who are into the effects that he uses. We then followed this up with Billy Brooks. This is the album Windows of the Mind, and the track that we played was 40 Days, which anybody who hears it will recognise immediately as being the track by a Tribe Called Quest called Lucian, which they sampled heavily. Great track, but I would say not a fantastic album necessarily.
Then moves on to an album by Frank Foster on Mainstream called The Loud Minority. The kind of vocal introduction to this by Dee Dee Bridgewater has been used as a kind of ad and all kinds of stuff. Giles Peterson, the UK radio DJs, used it as well. Amazing lineup of people in here. Frank Foster, kind of Marvin Peterson, Dick Griffin, Stanley Clarke, Elvin Jones, Jan Hammer, all kinds of people in here. This is actually not an original, this is a repressing that I bought quite recently from Honest John's record shop in West London. Good stuff. I mean, kind of halfway between a kind of funky soul jazz and a kind of spiritual jazz kind of vibe going on here.
Okay, another new album which arrived well, not a new album, a new old album which arrived in the post for me today. Alongside the Eddie Kendricks was this Ramsey Lewis album called Maiden Voyage. It's produced and arranged by the incredible Charles Stepney, obviously Ramsey Lewis on keys. Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire is playing the drums. And we listened to the track Les Fleurs, which was obviously also made famous by Rotary Connection and Minnie Riperton. Yeah, there's a great version of Maiden Voyage on this as well, with some fantastic string arrangements.
I'm not quite sure how we got from Ramsey Lewis to Neil Young, but we did somehow or other. And this is just I mean, everyone knows this record. This is Harvest. This is my copy I bought years and years and years ago. Derek had some very nice things to say about Harvest. He talked about it being a kind of one of the records he comes back to regularly to listen to as a kind of, not quite a comfort record, but something that's very familiar. Anyway, classic, and we played it out on the weekend from this.
Okay, well, strangely, well, there's a UK album that we listened to next. There is a kind of connection in that this band were described as having a very West Coast sound. The band are called Mighty Baby. The album is called A Jug of Love. They basically used to be, they originally called a band called The Action, who were a sort of psychedelic beat band in the 60s.
Whoops, sorry, Mike.
Then for one reason or another they all became Sufis, and here they are sitting on Persian carpets. They played together an awful lot apparently during the late 60s, early 70s, and they have a lovely kind of organic chemistry when they play together. It doesn't sound particularly like any one person solo, and they just play really well together. So we listened to the track The Happiest Man in the Carnival. Very nice album.
I can remember seeing them live actually a couple of times, and they were very, very good actually on this side. Moving slightly on into later, on to the 70s, now we have the Albion Band from the record called Rise Up Like the Sun. This is produced by Joe Boyd. And there's an interesting track which is probably the strangest version of Afro Blue, Mongo Santa Maria's Afro Blue, segueing into something called Dance Royale, which is actually a traditional kind of British folk tune. Kind of really interesting record. Got loads and loads of people from Fairfield Convention and so forth on here as well. But it's a kind of interesting Joe Boyd production, very much an underrated record actually. And while we're on Joe Boyd, the first book of the evening is to recommend White Bicycles by Joe Boyd, which is a great book actually.
Very good.
Really good book. I mean, about his kind of history as a producer. Wonderful description here of actually being in a room recording music actually, and the importance of kind of getting that kind of live sound in the studio and so forth. Really good, but if you haven't read it, read it.
Okay, staying with the UK, and in fact with Wales in fact, an album by the Welsh band Man. This album is called Rhinos, Winos and Lunatics, and it's generally recognised as probably being one of the best recorded albums that Man released. They tended to release a lot of live albums, and were really known primarily as a live band throughout the early to sort of late 70s really. Again, they were very influenced by West Coast bands like Quicksilver, Messenger Service, but they had their own Welsh twist. This album, I just bought this album when I was 14, it sort of had a big impact on me. Some great guitar playing. Interestingly produced by Roy Thomas Baker, who then went on to work with Queen on some of their biggest albums. I'd really recommend this album if you like your rock with a psych and West Coast twist.
The band actually, John Kibalina from Quicksilver Messenger actually played with Man live.
That's
and
right.
I remember seeing them down the road from where I live, which is kind of weird, seeing something like that. This is definitely not British. This is an album I bought originally when I was probably about 14 or 15 as well, but I've just bought a 180 gram reissue of this. This is Captain Beefart licked my decals off. I mean, what to say about it really? Just classic. I love Captain Beefart, and this is one of his great. This is a record he put out after Troutmaster's Replica, and it's a dead good one. And listen to track I Love You Big Dummy.
Okay, so I think this is our last track of the first half of the session. As you can see, this is Jimi Hendrix. This is a CD which is also actually available on vinyl. It's just come out fairly recently. It's called People, Hell and Angels, and it's supposedly 11 tracks that have never been released before, although in fact I think different versions have come out on some of the other albums. But actually there's some great playing on here. We were listening to track 4 on here, which is called Bleeding Heart, which basically is just Hendrix playing the blues as no one else does, with the Band of Gypsies, Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. Beautiful playing, beautiful guitar work, great album.
It's amazing, every time you hear Jimi Hendrix it sounds completely fresh, actually. There are not many musicians like that, actually. Great way to end the first half of the session.
Yeah, so that was nice and quick.
That was very quick. In fact, that was only 10 minutes 55 seconds, but we'll take a break and we'll come back and do the second half in a minute.
Okay.